Yeah. Okay. So we'll be talking about how not to teach grammar today. It will be our last live broadcast in the grammar edition, in the grammar live broadcast edition. And we picked this this topic to be the last one because over the last two live broadcasts, we showed you how grammar should be taught, how it should be introduced in class, and today we're going to see the opposite, the other way around, to kind of wrap up what we've been talking about, right? Again, guys, if you want to, you can make a comment in the chat box, you can ask questions over there, okay? Feel free to do so. All right. So let's start by giving you a general idea of what not to do when teaching grammar. So the first thing is no contextualization whatsoever. So a teacher should always contextualize their class before starting teaching grammar. I don't know if you remember, but in last Monday, I told you that it's very important for you to not start from the grammar topic. So you should involve your students in the topic of your class, get them to talk as much as they can about that so they can get familiarized and comfortable with that theme. And then from the theme, you introduce the grammar, right? So no contextualization is really bad for students because, I mean, it's important that they understand why they're being taught that grammar topic, you know, so that's what contextualization is for. All right, so the next thing for you not to do when teaching grammar is using too complicated meta language. So meta language are words like subject, object, adverbial phrase, adjective, transitive verb, intransitive verb. And you might think something like, oh, it's too easy. Who can't understand it? When I look at a sentence or when I say a sentence, I think about it. Well, we are teachers and we tend to like this kind of information. It's important to us. It makes sense to us. But most students, they don't like it. I have a student who he's in his 50s and he's an A2 student. And the other day I was teaching him subject and object pronouns. And there was no way for me to not say the words subject and object. But before saying these words more frequently in the class, what did I do? I told him the subject is the person who does the action and it precedes the verb. And I showed him this order that the English structure has. So we have this structure in English, the SVO structure, subject, verb, object. And then after I showed it to him, I told him, so the subject is who does the action, which means this is the person or the thing comes before the verb. On the other hand, the object is who receives the action. So it comes after the verb. And then I gave him an example. So for example, I love you. So I asked him, what is the subject of the sentence? Who does the action of loving? And then he figured it out. It was I. And then I asked him what was the object. So who received the action of being loved? And he answered, you. And then once I established this pattern with him, it was okay for me to use these words. But notice that I didn't use adverbial phrase, adjective, transitive verb, intransitive verb, you know? And he told me, Patricia, I used to hate Portuguese when I was a student back in school. I've never been able to memorize these words. So I'm learning now from you, because before having English lessons. I didn't know that. But be careful when you do that, right? So if you use this kind of meta language, which sometimes is important, try to make it smooth for your student to understand, and then you can use it recurrently in your lesson. Okay, otherwise it will just get too boring for them, and they will feel like they will feel like me learning physics. Back in school, I was terrible at learning physics, so I suck at it. I didn't feel comfortable learning that, you know, because the teachers never made me feel comfortable. And one of our roles as teachers is to make our students comfortable, is to facilitate their learning process, right? So if you use too complicated meta language, it won't happen. I'm sorry. Okay, so one other thing you shouldn't do while teaching grammar is over teaching the grammar topic. I posed the example of present continuous here. So when we first teach present continuous to students, we usually teach it by telling them that this verb tense is used to talk about something happening at the moment of speaking, right? So for example, I am studying now, right? I am drinking water, whatever. But imagine that you as a teacher like the present continuous so much because we have our favorite grammar topics, right? And you want to teach your student besides that, but your student is a basic level student, you know, but you want to teach him that the present continuous can also be used to talk about future actions. And also it can be used to talk about actions that happen frequently that annoy you. For example, she's always calling me at lunchtime. Teacher, I don't know if you remember this, but as far as I remember, I learned this as a B2 student. It hasn't been so long, you know, back in 2012, 2013. So, I mean, this student might be an A1, A2 student, so it doesn't make any sense for you to teach him or her something so advanced for their level. It will make them feel frustrated. They will feel like they were not carved out to learn that language. Just like me when I learned physics. I felt like it wasn't for me, you know? So don't try and overteach what shouldn't be taught at that moment. And probably your student has a question like, oh, can I use this in that situation? It's not that you're not going to answer, but tell him or her, okay, you can or can't, whatever, but you're going to study it in more depth in the future, right? I think you have a story about this to tell us, don't you?
Yes, I do. I was thinking about that. We talked about earlier, right? But because I took a course for English teachers in Vancouver, so like 2 years ago, and there was something about that. The teacher was saying that sometimes we feel, or we may feel, right, like embarrassed because the student asks something else for us, and then you think, oh, I'm not going to answer that. He's going to think that I don't know, because if I say, oh, look, you are not supposed to learn this topic now, he's going to think, oh, why not? Maybe the teacher doesn't know. And we should prepare ourselves not to be embarrassed and not to be worried about that, because she used this example, which I think I always remember. Like if a child asks you for like to grab a knife, you're not going to let her because it's not allowed. Or for a person who is a teenager who is 15, and then the teenager asks you to drive a car, you're going to say no, because that's not allowed. It's not the moment, right? Of course, we are talking about like severe examples, but she's saying if it's not allowed, it's not allowed. It's not the moment, it's not the moment. So you just say, look, maybe like just what Patricia said, you can even say like you use this in this situation just for the student to understand like, okay, that's possible, but that's it, maximum you can say that. So if it's not the moment, for you not to get the student, to make the student too confused, you can just say this is not the moment now, we're going to see it in the proper time, and that's it. And you may not feel embarrassed. You should not feel embarrassed because you're not teaching something at that moment, just because it's not the moment.
Yeah, that's very true. We were talking about scaffolding in our first live broadcast. So I don't know if you remember the concept of scaffolding, but it is in a class, you should build up the content with your students, right? So you start from the most simple form, and then you can make it more and more complex. And it's the same for the whole learning process. We teach in a spiral, you know, because for example, let's say I teach the present continuous here, and then the spiral goes like this. And at this point, next time I will teach the present continuous again, but I will do it in a more complex way, expanding what the student already knows. So I'm not going to teach it again. I mean, I might if the student doesn't remember the structure or something, but the idea when you teach something again and again and again is that you expand what the student already knows, right? So the same concept of scaffolding really fits here. Does someone have any comments?
I guess so.
Yeah, okay, so she's gonna text, Tachi's gonna text. Okay, so while they text Tachi, I'm going to talk about the next topic, which is not relating L1 and L2. So L1 is our mother tongue, our the first language that we acquire in life, and L2 is another language that you learn, right? And why is it a problem not to relate both languages? Because this can facilitate the learning process, right? For example, present past perfect is something really, really complex. It's a really complex structure for students. But if you relate the past perfect in English with the similar form in Portuguese, you can make a bridge between the two languages so the student can use the language more autonomously. Again, your role as a teacher is to facilitate their learning. So you want them to be autonomous when they use the language, right? So it's not a problem. There are many teachers who say, oh, you can't think in Portuguese, it's a sin. And you know, the only reference that the student has is their mother tongue. Why can't they think in their mother tongue, you know? They will just get lost if they are not allowed to think in their mother tongue. So it means to facilitate the learning process, right? And remember, guys, language learning, this is something I mentioned back in the first live broadcast. Language learning differs a lot from language acquisition. So language acquisition is what we do when we're babies, when we're toddlers, when we're learning our mother tongue, right? So the only reference that the child has is their parents, their relatives, and then they start noticing the language and they start using it, even though they make mistakes at first, and then they keep learning it, right? But language learning is not the same as language acquisition. When you learn a language, you have already acquired a language. You already have your mother tongue. So it shouldn't be a problem for the student to relate their own language, their mother tongue, with the second language they're learning, right? So shall I answer the question here, Amanda?
You shall.
Yeah.
I can also do that. I actually say whatever you want to say, because I also want to say something. I think it's a very interesting question, actually.
So do you want to read it?
Sure. I had a situation today. The student wanted to know this sentence in English. Ela não via a prima já. Deve ser, né? Ela não via a prima há muito tempo. And I said, try to say that in another way, because that's too hard. In the end, I ended up telling her. I didn't go over the whole present perfect thing, but I had to give her an answer because she was not satisfied in saying it another way. So with students who are too inquisitive, it's hard not to explain something.
Yes. Yeah, she's a beginner.
She's a beginner.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Oh, it might scare them away if they know that there is a verb tense that there isn't in Portuguese, especially because of this topic I've just mentioned, because the students, especially the beginner ones, they tend to relate a lot L1 and L2. So can you imagine a beginner student getting to know that there isn't the thing they want to say in Portuguese? So they might feel discouraged, you know. So you did the right thing. Who did that? It was Thais, right?
It was Tati.
It was Tati, sorry, Tati. So you did the right thing, Tati. I mean, trying to make them think in another way, which always develops fluency. This is great for students, right? Making them think what they want to say in another way. For example, I don't know how to say this in English. They are intermediate students. Okay, try to change the sentence so you can communicate, you can convey your message. This develops fluency a lot. So you helped your student develop his or her fluency, and you didn't prevent them from the answer. So there is an answer to that question. It's like this and that, but it is not the time. So this is what I do with some students of mine who are very inquisitive too. So they just won't take no, oh, I can't say for an answer. And actually, I don't think you should just say, oh, I won't answer that, because they're interested, right? So having an interested student is very valuable. So you did the right thing, Tati. I would do the same.
I think like the most important thing is for sure to tell the student to say in another way, because okay, we're gonna say that, we're gonna answer and say how the sentence really is, and they're gonna forget in a minute. So they're not going to be able to speak that sentence nor the other sentence, right? The simple one. So it's the most important thing is this. So try to tell me, how would you say that? Okay, you don't know how to say this sentence. How would you try to transmit that message to me? So I would do that for sure. And if they keep asking, I would say, okay, it's like that. And the sentence is a little confusing, right? So I would say it's like that, but don't get scared. We're going to get that at the correct time. So you're going to understand everything just fine. So like just reduce the problem and the complex, right? The complexity of the sentence. And but I think the most important is to tell the student to create the sentence another way, so then they can transmit the message anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, so another problem, another way not to teach to teach grammar is with no innovations when teaching it. This is also something we mentioned in our first live broadcast, so we should in the last one. Yeah, so we should always keep trying to bring different things. I mean, of course, there will be some methods or some approaches you will be more familiarized with because of your own style. And it also depends on your students, right? For example, I told you that last year I had a couple of elderly students, and if I taught them through the inductive approach, they would just kill me. They would shut their computers and then say, that's it, I'm gonna have classes with you anymore because you can't teach, right? So, but if you have a group of students or a private student that gives you some wiggle room for you to bring new things, new ways of teaching something, it's going to be great both for you, because you will see what works best for you, and for your student or for your class, because they will see the way they learn better. We always have a way through which we learn better, right? So they can give you feedback afterwards. Oh, teacher, I really like the way that you taught grammar today. So you should try to bring it more often. And having this kind of feedback is really worth it. It's really worth it because we feel, okay, my work is being praised. My effort is being seen here. And sometimes we want it from students, right? So these are some reasons why we should bring innovations when teaching grammar. Another problem, I told you about this in our first live broadcast, not knowing your audience. So not taking into consideration the student's needs, the student's expectations, their interests, and their learning style, for example, right? So as I told you before, innovations, try to bring in as much innovation as you can, but know your audience. As I said, if I had brought this kind of innovation, like the inductive teaching approach, to my couple of elderly students, they wouldn't be with me anymore, you know. But you have to try. You should try. If it's not a too extreme group of students, especially when we as of their age, you should try to bring innovations, but knowing what they expect from you. So if they're not interested, if they're teenagers and they're not interested in learning grammar through meta language, does it mean you're not going to teach grammar? Of course not. You're going to teach grammar, but you're going to try not to use as much meta language as you would for a group of adults. You know, so that's what I'm talking about here. Prioritizing any methodological fashions that come up in the teaching field rather than valuing your own intuition as a teacher. This can be a tricky one because you can think like, okay, what is my intuition as a teacher? I've been a teacher for about 1 year, 2 years. I don't know, I'm new at this. So how can I have some sort of intuition? Well, experience, of course, it allows you that, right? But also courses and improving, trying to improve what you have done in your career, you know. Also self-learning, like self-studying books, grammar books, right? It all helps you with your intuition, because if you study by yourself grammar, for example, you're going to figure out some ways that work for you to learn grammar. So why can you not try that with your students? You may be new at this, it's no problem, but then your students might get a lot from your experience. You don't have much experience in the classroom, but you have experience with yourself. You can try it, and it's much more worth it than following any methodological fashions that come out in the market, you know, because I mean, those fashions, they come and go, guys. So today people are saying, no, you shouldn't teach grammar. Grammar is, I was going to say a bad word, but teaching grammar is not good. Useless, thank you. It's useless. And then tomorrow someone will come and say, no, you have to teach grammar, you have to use meta language, you know. So it's a pendulum, they come and go all the time, but your experience as a teacher, your experience as a learner tells you much more what you should do than those methodological fashions, right? Does anybody have any comments so far? Am I going too fast? Am I making any sense to you? Is it okay? If you want to say something too, Amanda, feel free to do so, okay?
Okay.
Yeah? Okay, I don't think there's anything here.
Everybody's good,
Yeah, okay. All right, guys, so now I'm going to give you an example of how not to teach the past perfect, right? So teaching those perfect tenses can be a big, huge mess because, for example, the present perfect, we don't have in Portuguese, right? But the past perfect is not that bad, you might think, because we can make a correlation between Portuguese and English, right? But I'm going to show you a class that shouldn't be taught on the past perfect tense, right? Well, so first of all, you introduce your lesson by telling the class they're going to have a grammar lesson. So, before I start, there are 7 problems here. I want you to take note of which you think are the problems with this lesson. So then I'm going to ask you guys, okay? Let's interact a little bit. So the first thing you do is you introduce the lesson by telling the class they're going to have a grammar lesson. Next, you write on the board past perfect, just like back in school. I remember my lessons at school when I was a student, and it was just like this. Next, you explain the rules of the formation of the structure formation and use of the structure, as in he had worked, by telling them that this verb tense is used to talk about something that happened in the past before something else, and that it is also used in reported speech to talk about something that happened in the past. So here I'm talking about two situations of the use of past perfect, right?
By now, they already gave up, right? Oh my God. Look at that explanation.
What the hell is going on, right?
Yeah.
I'm never gonna learn this. Yeah, next, you also point out that this verb tense is used in third conditional clauses, like if I had known he was coming, blah, 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 blah. So we have three uses of the past perfect here, okay? When you talk about something that happened before something else in the past, when we talk about reported speech, and when we have third conditional. And then you as a teacher ask if the class understands it and distribute the exercises for them to practice the content. This is the wrap up of the grammar teaching, right? The exercises consist of transforming sentences both in the past simple and present perfect into past perfect ones, as in, I went to the beach, I had gone to the beach. She has watched the movie, she had watched the movie. And this is the exercise, right? Then the students do this exercise individually and then take turns to say their answers, and the teacher corrects any errors that might come up. In the last 10 minutes, the teacher plays hangman with the students in the plural, there should be an S there, sorry, where what should be guessed are some random words in English. So just a vocabulary hangman, right? Now I want to know from you, teachers, what are the problems with this class? As I told you, there are 7, but if you can find more the merrier. So any volunteers to write in the chat box for us?
Oh my God, you can also speak if you want to, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you did.
You can raise your hands and you can speak.
Yeah,
or
sure.
You can type. But come on, answer a little bit. Sorry, tell us you found at least one mistake, right?
Yeah. Please give your 2 cents, guys. Let's see what you've got. If you want to unmute yourselves, you can do so, right?
No, I guess they can't. I think I have to raise hands. Too much information to the class.
Yeah, right. Too much information. What else? No contextualization. Great. Do you want me to go back a few slides for you to try to remember what happened in the class? If you want, I can do it. Okay, let me do it. I imagined it would be tough for you to remember everything. Okay, so the beginning of the class is this one, okay?
It's boring. I love it.
It's boring, Bia. That's right. So introduce the lesson by telling them they're going to have a grammar lesson. Write present perfect on the board. Using meta language. Good. All right. Does it mean we can't use meta language at all?
Too technical.
Too technical. Yeah, I die as a student. Yes. Guys, it doesn't mean that we can't use meta language, but we have to choose our battles, right? Don't use all the meta language that there is in the English language in the same lesson. That is my tip for you, right? And then you explain the rules of formation in when we talk about things that happened in the past before other things, and when we use reported speech, and also when we use third conditional, right? So as you said, too much information. Ask the class if they understand it and distribute the exercises for them to practice the content. Do you think there is a problem here with this topic? Could explain the 3 different uses in 3 different classes. Definitely, and probably classes in different levels. Most likely, right? So do you think it is a problem? The students asking the students if they understand it and distribute the exercises. Yeah. Okay.
It's CCQ.
Yeah. Do you know what CCQ is?
Yeah, it's like, it's a tip. CCQ.
CCQ. Who knows what CCQ stands for? No, I don't think they know it. Amanda, can you tell them what it is?
Yeah, this is like concept checking questions. I don't know what I mean. Okay, it's concept checking questions. So you should never ask students, oh, did you get it? Did you understand? Do you understand? Because they're going to say yes. Okay, maybe like in some rarely, right, exceptions, they say, no, I think I am not sure, but this is very rare because one, they may think they understood or they are embarrassed to say, no, I didn't get it. Just start over, right? So they're gonna say, they may feel pressed. Yeah, maybe. Can you repeat the meaning of each letter? Sure. It's concept checking questions. Concept checking questions. So for you to check that they understood the concept, you have to make the right question. So you have to make a question that they are going to kind of explain the answer, not just did you get it? So yes, we did. Or yes, I did, right? So you have to ask, oh, okay, so what this stands for? What is the purpose of that? Or when can we use this verb tense or whatever you were explaining? You have to say something that they have to answer, explaining it, right? Not only saying yes or no.
And that's why it is so important to have a context before you teach the grammar, because the context will show them the use of that grammar structure. And then when you ask them the CCQ question, or when you make the CCQ, you can ask them, for example, why do we have to use had, like past perfect, right? Had done. So why do we have to use the had? Oh, because in Portuguese, it means tinha. Why not use Portuguese to explain, to help you explain, right? Oh, and why do we have to use the main verb in this form? Because in Portuguese, we say feito. So it's the same in English, right? So, I mean, of course, there are other concept checking questions. So when you teach the past perfect for the first time, you usually teach it to talk about actions that happened in the past before other actions. So what should you do? You should write the sentences with 2 actions, one action before the other. So when I arrived at home, my mom had cleaned it all. So you can ask the students, okay, which action happened first? Me arriving home or my mom cleaning it? My mom cleaning it. This is a type of CCQ, right?
Yeah, and this also I have something to add, because I think here we are commenting about maybe A2 or B1 students, right? But and then I told you guys that you have to make questions that they have to explain something. But imagine they're beginners. You're allowed to ask yes or no questions, but you don't ask, did you understand? You ask, okay, so is this used in the past? Is this used in present? Is this used for that condition? So they're going to say yes or no, but answering something meaningful, right? Not if they got it, okay?
Yeah, for sure. And you can do it for any grammar topic, for present continuous, for present simple, for verb to be, for any, really. I don't see a problem using Portuguese when we explain grammar rules. Of course not. No, we should rely on Portuguese because it makes students more comfortable. It does. It facilitates a lot their learning. Okay, so do you see any problems with this exercise consisting of the students transforming the sentences which are in the past simple and in present perfect to past perfect sentences? Do you think there's a problem here with this step? If you want to raise your hands to speak, you can do it, or you can write it, you can type it in the chat box, don't worry. Typing takes a long time, right? Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to answer this one in a while in the problems because there will be all spelled out for you. There is no objective. Good, Thais. Yes. Like, what is the communicative goal here? Why am I changing sentences from the past simple to the past perfect and sentences from the present perfect to the past perfect? What's the use of that, right? So that's great. So the students do it individually and then take turns to say their answers and the teacher corrects any errors. I'm going through these a little bit faster because then there will be the explanations to the problems, right? And then in the last minutes, the teacher plays hangman with the students where what should be guessed are some random words in English. Guys, feel free to type in the chat box whatever you think about these steps here, but I'm moving on. So the first problem with this class is teaching the past perfect isolated from other forms. So someone talked about contextualization. I think it was Maria Vitória. There is no contextualization whatsoever, but also the past perfect is not used to, with another action in the past to contrast both actions. I mean, in time reference wise. So there are two examples here. When we arrived at the party, the other guests left. And when we arrived at the party, the other guests had left. This is an example. It's a very common example when we teach the past perfect that we can ask our students, is there any difference in meaning between saying when we arrived at the party, the other guests left, and when we arrived at the party, the other guests had left? You guys tell me in the chat box, are there any differences here between these two sentences when it comes to meaning? Should we expect our students to understand? Bia wants to talk. Go ahead, Bia.
Like when we arrived at the party, the other guests left. Like in the second moment that you arrived, the people left. And the second one, when we arrived at the party, the other guests had left. When we arrived, they already had left it.
Yeah.
Could you understand?
So in the second sentence, which action happened first? Us arriving at the party or the other guests leaving?
The other guests had left it.
Yes, first they left and then we arrived at the party, right? So we're supposed to make students understand that. And with a simple example, there's nothing much here, right? Thank you very much, Bia. You're so kind. Okay, the second problem, relying only on explanation with no examples whatsoever. It lays considerable faith in the learner's capacity to create their own context. So the teacher gives them 3 sentences, talks about reported speech. Do you think students will remember when you say reported speech? Do you think it will ring a bell and no examples will be needed? Come on, teacher. You will be relying too much on their memory. Again, meta language can be something really tough. We are teachers, we know what reported speech is, but we can't expect our students to understand it, right? So providing them with examples is really important for them to have the language used at grasp, because otherwise it will be just, you know, in the air, up in the air, and it will be too vague for them. Another problem with this class, bringing in several uses of the past perfect at the same time. Someone mentioned that without much exemplification and using fairly difficult meta language. Again, reported speech, something that happened in the past before something else, but then the teacher just brought the first half of the sentence. He or she didn't bring the second part, which tells us what happened afterwards, right? And also talking about third conditional. If I had won the lottery, you completed, right? So, I mean, students need more exemplification. If you don't want to bring in exemplification for them, you can elicit it from them. It's also great. It's inductive teaching approach, right? We've already talked about that, but they need this so they can understand the use of what you're teaching. Another problem number 4, the only check of students' understanding is or was, do you understand? Hardly a reliable means to gauge the success or not of the presentation. So for me, what I explained in my class can be perfectly clear, but probably not for my students. I don't know, you know, we don't live in each other's minds, so we must be sure, we must make sure that they understood. And Amanda gave a brilliant example of how you can make sure they understand. So CCQs are a great way of doing this, right? If you don't use CCQs already, which I doubt you don't, because even though you might not know the terminology, you probably use it with your students, try using it. You'll see the progress they will make when after you explain something, so you can elicit from them what they got, right? And don't be afraid of correcting them. If you ask them a CCQ and they answer it wrong, tell them the right answer, you know, because this is the moment for you to do that. Problem number 5. Using a practice activity that uses mechanical manipulation. Someone, I think it was Taisha, said there was no objective. What's the objective of that activity, right? So it's too mechanical, which along with the absence of much context, there is no context in that activity. So what is the purpose of you learning past perfect, sorry. It makes it hard, if not impossible, for students to work out the effect on meaning the transformation entails. So why should I transform a past simple sentence to a past perfect sentence? If I am teaching them reported speech, it makes total sense. If I contextualize reported speech, and if I say a sentence in the past simple and then I transform it to the past perfect, brilliant. Present perfect, the same thing. If you say a sentence in the direct speech in the present perfect, and then when you change it to the reported speech, you use the past perfect, kudos on you. But if not, what's the purpose? There's none, right? Next problem, assigning a practice activity to be done individually prevents students from learning collaboratively. I guess I've been too extensive on telling you how much I like students working together, right? So when they work collaboratively, what they learn makes more sense to them because they think together. It's another opportunity for them to use English, you know, and peer teaching is much more can be much more effective than teacher teaching, because there is a certain level of hierarchy, you know, between the teacher and the student, which there isn't between peers. So they might feel more comfortable if they explain the grammar topic to one another, right? And checking it, plus besides that, checking it in an open class mode provides students with a low volume of speaking practice, which I mentioned before. So if they do it in pairs, no matter if they do the exercise and exchange pairs to check it, or if they do it individually but then check in pairs, they will have an extra opportunity for them to put their English practice in use, right? And the seventh and final problem that we have spotted here, but if you have spotted others, you can tell us, please, is switching to an unrelated word game. So it means to miss the opportunity to set up some kind of more language productive, interactive activity as a means of personalizing the language. So 10 minutes here that the teacher spent, 10 wasted minutes, I'm sorry, but those minutes were wasted because they could have been used to make students practice what they have learned. More importantly, to make a freer practice, right? Because usually when we teach grammar, it's advisable that you have a more controlled practice, like a written exercise, and then you have a freer practice where students have to interact more freely, creating dialogues, role playing, you know, writing their own sentences according to their life experiences. It is very important because this helps personalize the language and make what they have learned more meaningful to them. So we can make them autonomous language users. Again, this is what we're there for, to make them not depend on us for the rest of their lives. We want them to fly, right? So this is the seventh problem that we spotted. And then I told you about this last activity, that activity in which they had to transform the sentences in the past perfect to the past simple to the past perfect, and in the present perfect to the past perfect. So here's a way for you to personalize the past perfect, which is a freer practice, right? So it's more advisable for you to use after the more controlled practice. So look, use this pattern to write 5 true sentences about yourself. So guys, it would be something you would hand into your students, or that you would project on the board, right? Use this pattern to write 5 true sentences about yourself. So patterns are really important for students as well, because patterns make them feel more confident, because they will use that structure a lot of times. And something that you use a lot of times tend to get stuck in your mind. So it's the same with chunks, right? So thank you, excuse me, please. Can you repeat that, please? When you teach that to your A1 students, it doesn't make much of a sense for them, but then they become chunks that they start using in class, right? So pattern is really important for them. So before I had never, and then you place an example for them. Before I went to Scotland, I had never met a Scottish. Guys, one important thing here. When you pose examples to students, try to relate those examples to your life. Students are really curious about our lives. They want to know who we are, because they want to see beyond the teacher. They know there is a person there. They want to get to know this person, you know? So this example is true for me. So you can make up any other examples that would be true for you. So before I went to Scotland, I had never met a Scottish, right? And then they will take it as a pattern for them to do to make their own sentences. After they do this first step, then you have them exchange their sentences with their partners. So you pair them up, right? and ask each other. So they should ask each other the questions about your statements. So for example, I stated this: before I went to Scotland, I had never met a Scottish. Oh, really? What were you doing in Scotland? Or why did you go to Scotland? Was it like you expected it to be? So look, here they are not exactly using the past perfect, but they're using other language that they already know. You know, so they are making conversation. It's meaningful for them. So it's more meaningful for sure than the Hangman game that you would just play with random words and that have no relation with the class topic, which didn't have a topic, by the way, right? The topic was the past perfect. There was no contextualization. There's something here in the chat. Love chunks. Yes, Beatriz. Chunks are great. Students need them. Patterns also, they're really important, right? So guys, any comments here? Do you disagree with me? You can disagree, okay? Don't worry. If you want to type it in the chat box or open your microphones, raise your hands and we can talk. Do you have any comments here, Amanda, on this activity?
No, nothing to add.
Yeah. Do you think patterns are also good?
For sure, for sure. And I create my own patterns. I mean, I keep repeating for them like everything. And for example, I call the S for he, she, it, like special case. So then I always say, so this is special case. And the person says, oh my God, special case. I always forget special case. And then now it's a special case. I think they're going to tell everybody, do you know a special case? And they're going to be like, what is a special case? But special case is like that. And like, also the verb to be plus ing, verb to be plus ing, verb to be plus forever and ever, and then I keep repeating it all the time.
Yeah, it rings a bell when you say it, right? So it's important to have these. You agree, Thais? Great. Okay, guys. So I will consider there are no other questions or comments here, right?
You got it, right? Did you understand? Or
yeah, do you understand? Any questions? Beatriz said, I loved it. I love chunks, but I didn't know how to teach with them. And I believe it is a great way to learn grammar. Oh, that's great. Great to know it, Beatriz. It can't be used with all grammar topics, right? But it helps a lot with some of them. For example, before I hadn't, you know, so they can build these structures more easily in their heads, and then next time they have to use them, it will be there already, you know, they won't have to think about it too much, right?
Yeah.
Okay, people.
So guys, we told you in the other live broadcast, and we are telling you again, of course, because our course Grammar T, so grammar for teachers and how to teach grammar, it's starting soon, March 7th. So they're going to be 6 months, so 27-hour course. It's going to be live on Zoom, so you can ask as much as you want. We have 10 modules of like content, and we also have simple lessons, so you're going to know lots and lots of information on how to teach, what to do, how to teach this and that. So very interesting.
Yeah, simple lessons, just like we had in our last live broadcast, like this one that we're having today, right, on how not to teach grammar. It's also a simple lesson. So, but it's like upside down. It's backwards because this is how you should not proceed. But either way, it illustrates a lot what we're talking about, because talking only about theory can get dull, just like for students using too much meta language can be meaningless. So besides learning theory, which is the basis, right, for which is the base for what we're going to teach in our course, we're going to teach through simple lessons where you can visualize better what we're talking about, and you can get your own lessons going your own way, right? Because we're going to give examples of sample lessons with certain grammar topics, but you can apply them to other grammar topics as well, to different
also
levels.
approaches, right? We're talking about different approaches, so you can choose the best one for you or the best one for that topic.
Or for your group, or for your student, your private student, right?
Yeah.
So we'll be teaching a lot of interesting things here, and yeah, it's worth checking it out, right?
Yeah, and starting soon, right? So March 7th already. We have people here, teachers here that are already in. So I know, I see you. And then if you're not, link is in bio, okay? So don't miss that opportunity.
Yeah, we have 2 weeks before we start. I mean, next week is Carnival, and we'll be doing nothing because Brazil stops in Carnival. But then, in the week after that, we'll be kicking off our course, and we're very, very excited about it. Okay,
Yeah,
we hope to see you there.
Monday 8:30, right?
No, 8. From 8 to
sorry.
9:30. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, people, so it was great being with you today. You interacted a lot. Thank you very much for answering my questions.
Yeah,
And
thanks for being here, right?
yeah, sure. And should you have any questions about the course or anything, feel free to ask Amanda or me if you follow me on Instagram, right? So we're there to help you, right? We'll be very happy to answer your questions.